Well, thank you, everyone on the line. I'm Caroline. I am your resident trucking business professor here at the Bobtail Help Desk. My goal is to help your trucking business thrive. So if that sounds good to you, sounds like something you're interested in, go check us out on YouTube. Go check us out on our Facebook group, the Bobtail Help Desk. We really exist here to help you succeed in the trucking business. So check out our content. We make all of our content and all of our events available for free. And at Bobtail, we provide a factoring service. So definitely go check those out at bobtail.com. We're going to go ahead and get started. All right. So today I am joined by George Thellman, who is a director at TrueTMS. He has over 10 years of experience in the transportation industry. And he's always been an advocate for small and mid-sized trucking and logistics businesses, and providing them the same access to technology as the big enterprise companies have been afforded in the past. So we see this trend in technology in transportation, George, that a lot of these platforms are built for big companies that have IT departments and really have a lot of resources to manage those. Can you talk about what brought you into the transportation industry and how you've been trying to change that?
Sure, and thanks for having me today. It's great to be amongst people that all have the same ideas of helping the little guys thrive in this industry. I actually stumbled on the trucking industry. I have a vast background in technology and people, and at the beginning of this decade, I started, actually not this decade, it was last decade. Sorry, it's 2023. I started working for an enterprise level TMS software company, and I saw all sides of that business, from development to support to training to solution architecting. And there was always a common denominator of, this is servicing the big guys that don't need as much help as the little guys. Why is it so difficult? Why can't we make it easier to use? Why can't the little guys, and when I say little, I'm not meaning that in a bad way. I'm meaning that in just and they're the largest segment of this industry, right? 97% of it or so are less than 20 trucks. And that's what I mean by the little guys, the small carriers, independent owner operators. And they often are ignored or underserved. And so that led me to TrueTMS in 2021 to help see it through the market and where we are today. So like I said, I stumbled upon it, but I just gravitated to this industry in that sense.
Absolutely. We are also joined today by our very own Gurvir Singh, who is our COO here at Bobtail. And we're going to be asking some questions to George and Gurvir in this session. But Gurvir, I wanted to also get a little note on your background. I know trucking is literally in your blood, has been for forever. So can you tell us a little bit about your background in trucking and what brought you to start Bobtail?
Yeah, first of all, hi everyone. Like you said, my dad got into trucking in the late 80s, and he was one of the first Punjabi families in Kansas to get into trucking, which was through my cousins. So a lot of my cousins and relatives were in trucking, and my dad spent the last 30 years driving a truck, so he's been an owner operator. And after I graduated college, because this was something that I had done for some time, helping my dad out with a lot of various parts of the business, whether booking loads or filling out carrier packets, washing trucks. I was sort of the free labor around the home. So I learned a lot of the business through my dad. So after college, my first entrepreneurial stint was just starting a trucking company out of college. So I started a trucking company out of college, and then at some point I used to factor our invoices with another factor, and just had a very horrible experience, and thought we can bring something new and fresh to the market, where we had focused on customer service, good technology, and transparency. So that's what led me to starting Bobtail. So very quickly, family was in trucking, started my own trucking company out of college because that's one of the things that I knew very well, and then transitioned into Bobtail after that.
Great to hear that story. I know I've heard that a couple of times, and it's always really inspiring to understand, why we do what we do at Bobtail, and really cool to hear your story as well, George. So let's get into it. I have some questions here for you all, but my first question for you is how you have seen the technology evolve in the trucking industry over the years, and particularly when it comes to small carriers. So George, maybe we can start with you. Can you talk about maybe in your experience with TMSs, transportation management systems, how have those evolved over the last couple of years?
Sure. Actually, we can go even a step back further. I mean, in the technology space for this industry, we went from manual processes to all of a sudden we have these massive systems, very sophisticated. As the small companies started growing more and more, the thirst for this, became very prevalent, and all these apps started coming out. An app for this, an app for that. Now all of a sudden you have 20 apps on your phone, right? So what we saw there is something from feast or famine, right? We went from nothing to a whole bunch of apps, and now it's like app overload, app fatigue, and it's not helping them become streamlined. And so what I've been seeing is now people are condensing those apps into more singular ecosystems, but they're still siloed. They'll maybe not go all the way down to one app, and there'll still be a couple here and a couple there. But also the technology expands past the office and the back office. And you've seen tremendous amounts of technology in the truck or maintaining of the truck, right? You have predictive analytics that will tell you when a part will fail or about to fail, right? And so bring it in for maintenance work and so forth. And then of course all the sensors that are helping with the safety side of things. You're seeing more and more of that even being adopted by the small carriers. So it's kind of fun to watch because it is a bouncing ball, right? Because 1 minute it's a whole bunch of the operations is being efficient, and then it, like I said, became too efficient with all these apps and it was overran. And then now they're working on inside the truck, and now we're back to the operation side of the business that's being more streamlined. So it's fun to watch.
For sure. And Gurvir, can you speak from your experience running a trucking company? This was back, I'm not sure what year you started your trucking business, but it must have been at least before 2015 when you started Bobtail. So what did technology look like back then? And if in your answer, you can also answer the question that we got in the chat here about what ELDs, GPS, dash cams, those kinds of things. What did you use and what do you recommend now?
Yeah, technology has changed a lot. I remember when I was a kid, I would go on trips with my dad, and he would stop at truck stops, and there used to be actually load boards at truck stops. This was like 20 years ago. So DAT load board actually started out as a you would have TVs at the local truck stop, and you would see, hey, which broker posted which load, because internet was just a new thing, right? Not everybody had internet availability, and that's how you would book loads, right? Like you went into Idaho and you would go to a local truck stop. There would be a TV with all the local loads there. Prior to the TVs, they would actually have a whiteboard where you would just list the loads and the number to call to book a load. And then obviously with digitization, with the internet, you saw a digital load board come. So I mean, the technology has changed a lot. I think every few years you see sort of a new mechanism of how things are done. I'll fast forward to when I started the trucking company, which was 2011. Still using load boards at that time. And initially when we started out, we didn't have any TMS. And one of the key things for us was, hey, just seeing visibility and like, where do we want to change things? So TMS brought a lot of visibility, but we struggled with finding a TMS player for a smaller company. Because there were just not that many players, and the ones that serviced larger trucking companies, there was just a lot going on in those softwares. So we didn't want a problem of over technology either, right? So since when we started our trucking company, obviously TMS was the #1 thing. Just wanted to see what's our average rate per mile, what's our average expense, how much are we spending on fuel. If you don't know these numbers, I don't think you can about what do you want to change about your business. So really, I think our emphasis how we can see the transparency in the numbers.
I think one of the biggest progress made, and maybe some people consider it progress and some people don't, but maybe one of the big technological movements of the past few years has been the ELD mandate, right? So before that wasn't something that people were using. Now it's something been adopted by everyone because it's mandated. Gurvir, when did that happen, and how did you manage that? Were you already in business when that happened and you had to manage that change, or was that already?
Yeah, we
and
were
what
already in
ELDs
business.
were you using?
Yeah, at that time we used to use trackers. So before ELDs came, we would have these trackers that would just track the truck. So logs were done via paper, but we always had GPS location on all our assets. We know exactly where they were driving, the total mileage count, because for us data was very, very important. So before even ELD mandate came, we were tracking every single truck and the total mileage, because one of the most important things for me was tracking how much fuel consumption is happening on each truck. Funny stories, we had some drivers stealing fuel, right? So to be able to see those things and measure those things, we just needed data early on. But I think fast forward to 2019, I could be getting the years wrong with the mandates, or maybe 18, maybe even 17. If somebody knows, maybe you can correct me. I think maybe somewhere around 17, 18, right, George?
It started in 16, but it never became fully effective, I think, until 2019. It kept on getting, it's just like in Canada, right? They kept on kicking the proverbial, can down the road, right? Well, it's going to be mandated. Well, we're going to extend the mandation period, so forth. Because it's a big beast to have all those ELDs, implemented.
So we had a head start at it, and then we sort of got ELDs immediately, because now we didn't need trackers, and the ELDs could solve our tracking problem. It could solve us measuring our fuel efficiency, all of those things. So I think we kind of got on the ELDs pretty quickly. And I know a lot of small carriers were very resistant to it early on. And obviously that's why they had sort of this 2-year window of slowly getting onto it. But yeah, ELD has been a major shift I think in the last few years in terms of digitization in the industry.
With that too, real quick, is with the ELDs, there used to be only a couple players there, right? There was like Qualcomm, PeopleNet, Omnitrax, and there was not much more than that. And then after the mandating and technology advancements happening at the same time, you've now all of a sudden see a plethora of ELD providers out there that are no longer tethered to an in-cabin unit. Now they're Android-based, apps with a puck that you plug in. It's really expanded that market tremendously, for the better or for the worse. I'm still kind of figuring that out, because every day you see another ELD has been been banned or by the government, because they are still regulated by the government, because that's the regulated piece, right? So they have to be certified.
Sure.
So
I would recommend, I would say Keep Trucking, Samsara, and TruckX. I think TruckX is a little bit more affordable, but Samsara is a little bit more on the higher end, but it's a quality product for sure. So
you can Keep Trucking is now Motive, right?
Yep, Keep Trucking is now Motive. I think they Keep Trucking and Motive has the most of the market share. I think they've done really well on the technology side and the user experience side.
Yeah. And then the other ones were Samsara and say the other one again.
Keep Trucking, Samsara, and then TruckX.
TruckX.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. So tell us about, Gurvir, a little bit more about when you were running your fleet. What were some of the platforms that you were using earlier on, and what did you wish they did that they didn't back when you were running your trucking company?
I think one of our struggles was just finding a good TMS that could integrate with all these other tools. So we had very sort of standalone tools. One tool to track our trucks, one tool to did our load management and driver assignment and invoicing. One was a factoring tool. One was obviously DAT 360, we had an email tool for communications. I just wish that, now you have these tools where they integrate, they have a lot of integrations. You can simply input a load into a TMS and it could get factored really quickly, right? Or you're able to calculate or integrate your ELDs with your TMS, right? The locations of your ELDs. So I think there's a lot of cool integrations that just makes easier to manage a lot of your business from a single source. So I think that was one thing that we lacked.
George, what do you think about, I know that you haven't been on the carrier side before, but you have been on the user experience side of a TMS for larger carriers. So can you tell us a little bit about how you and your team have addressed some of those concerns that Gurvir just brought up?
Sure. For one, I call that the swivel chair, right? You're looking from screen to screen, get the alt tab. That's not efficient, bouncing from, application to application, or as I said before, the app fatigue. When you're looking at an enterprise level, mega fleet or so forth, they have resources in place. A lot of times it's more humans in place to be able to handle all those processes that are there. They're set up for that. When you're small and you're lean and mean, you're not set up to have an army of people to do a small task. So you need it to be streamlined. So like Gurvir was saying, having things integrated or being part of the core component, for example, in TrueTMS, we do track the GPS location through the mobile app of a driver. So it's already built into the system, but we also will integrate to your ELD if you want to use the ELD for hours of service brought in as well. The thing about it too is we at TrueTMS, especially me, you'll see me on the road at these different kinds of events like the Trucker Jamboree in July at the I-80 truck stop in Walcott, listening to the owner operators in the small fleets, finding out what is it that they're either not understanding or they wish they had or so forth in technology, because technology is a little I would say it's scary, right? It's change management. It's out of the comfort zone of business, even though they are very tech savvy and the outside of the truck in their daily life. They're using social media, so forth. But once they go into the operation of the business, it all of a sudden becomes comfort zone time, right? It's like I'm used to using a spreadsheet. I don't want to have to use this, even though it's the same thing. It's just a different shade of lipstick, right?
Right, absolutely. And Gurvir, can you speak to that in your experience? I know your dad is still an owner operator, right? And so you've seen this a lot firsthand for many decades of how to implement technology and how to change, because it really is, implementing technology is behavior change, right? And the management of behavior change and trying to change your own behavior in a lot of cases of business owners who are the operators of their trucks. Can you talk about how Bobtail has tried to address those challenges that owner operators and small fleets have in implementing technology?
Yeah, my dad still drives. He's sold his truck earlier, like I think 3 months ago, and just bought another one and wants to get back on the road because he's figured he can't sit still. I think when you drive for 30 plus years, I think you just like driving and he wants to stay on the road. So he's definitely getting back on the road. But I think in terms of Bobtail, trying to address those challenges, one is we just try to make invoicing, factoring really, really simple. And we also don't try to overwhelm the trucker with too much technology, because that's a problem too. If there's too much technology and you're trying to offer a trucker too much and an owner operator too much, they're not going to use it. I mean, there's so much technology available right now. You see a lot of them don't use much of it. So it has to make sense, right? Of where you're introducing technology correct. And where it's actually useful. So we definitely have that mindset. We try to keep things very simple and make sure that the utility aspect is there and not try to overbuild something. So I think in our sense, at Bobtail, we make factoring simple so that you don't have to do it and you can be focused on just booking loads. So in our platform, you can see all the collection notes. You can actually see update on an invoice, right? When any of our reps call the broker or the shipper to ask for an update, you can see that. So now you know that your invoices are being followed up with. We give you updates on when your invoice gets processed and when it's on the way. One of the major things that we saw with factoring was when you submit a batch of invoices, you had no idea when you were going to be paid. You actually had no idea whether it's going to be in 5 hours or tomorrow morning or 2 days. There's always this uncertainty. So we try to fix that with making sure that as soon as you submit a batch of invoices, we actually give you an exact time of when those funds will end up in your account. So it's small things like that which we focus on, where the technology has to make sense. We are trying to come up with some new products that, again, keeping things simple where it makes sense, where you could just simply forward a rate con to Bobtail and you can auto invoice the load. But those are just few examples where we have helped carriers and just offering that transparency of just doing collections and factoring really, really well and in a simple way, where that headache is not for them, it's on us.
I was just like you were saying, keeping it simple. And the other thing is there's this mindset of technology is trying to replace the human element. And I agree, too much technology just for the sake of technology is never good, no matter what industry, especially when you're helping someone that is not traditionally tech savvy. But what technology can bring in a meaningful way is to help streamline that process so you're not doing busy work. You can actually focus on finding better loads because you're not rushed to find a load because you're busy doing all these other things that you're trying to do to run your business, right? So it's not to replace the human, it's to make their jobs that much more efficient and meaningful. And like I said, just to build technology for the sake of technology is never a good recipe.
But there is another problem, particularly with small fleet owners. I'm the product owner of Trucker Calculator.
Go for it, Igor. Do you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to add that in my experience and in experience of developing Trucker Calculator, like it's not a TMS, it's just a simple financial, it's like a financial module taken from the TMS, and we made it simpler and just go deeper in financial side. But it's a big problem for small fleet owners to use something, at least. Like the major part of those guys, they just are used to watch at their bank account, or just they don't keep the track of anything. So we try to make everything as simple as possible, just to help them understand that this will be much easier to use than anything else. And that's a problem with the TMS systems, because our partners have a TMS system as their product, but small carriers, they don't really use it. Maybe that's a problem in marketing, I'm not sure, but
that's a good point, Igor. George, I wonder if you can respond to that. I know when we talked, and we just published or we're about to publish an article on our blog about TMSs, and the fact that first of all, the majority of motor carriers have fewer than 20 trucks, right? The majority have fewer than 10 trucks even. And the grand majority of those motor carriers do not use a TMS. You're on those there. So why is that? And if you've tried, let's say there's an owner operator on here that's tried to use a TMS before, didn't like it, couldn't get onboarded into it. What would you say to them, and how would you address some of those challenges that people have in implementing something like that?
Well, like you said, actually, I think the studies show that only 13 to 15% of the small fleets, less than 20 trucks, have adopted a TMS technology. And through my experience and various mediums that I've been on, different platforms talking about it, it all comes down to, well, there's money in the bank. Why should I change? I don't need technology, or I'm too small for technology, right? It's too complicated. I don't have the resources for it. So you have all these stigmas that we have to overcome as a technology company to show that it is not as you think it is, right? You are using technology already. You're using spreadsheets. You're using modern conveniences of different apps. But the difference is you're using all these different pieces. As Gurvir was saying, you have to bounce from screen to screen, or application, or I call it swivel chair. You're already doing it. All a TMS is doing is bringing it into one screen or one application, so you can minimize the downtime in between screens. And it's just a stigma that I think it's a stigma that has to be overcome. It's not a matter of they can't use it or it's too difficult. It's more of
for sure
culture. Culture has created it. Yeah,
it's habit, it's behavior. But Carlos just mentioned in the chat that he's using a platform. Carlos, do you want to talk a little bit about, or just if you want to share in the chat, what are some of the things that you're not happy with the current provider that you're using, the current system that you're using? So George, maybe you can speak to the record keeping bit of
Sure.
a good TMS.
Yeah, real quick too. The other thing could be also cost.
It's a very
Barrier of
interesting
entrance.
question, especially for us, because we have a free version for now. Again, it's not a TMS system, but I'm really, I'm very interested in your opinion on the payment challenges, let's say, for a young TMS system or for another platform in trucking, like how the payment should be.
Yeah, George, I wonder if
built.
you can, George, can you speak to the affordability aspect of some of the platforms and technology?
Currently, affordability is, again, in the eye of the beholder. You're spending all this time doing it manually, and we can do an analysis of how long does it take you to do, divide it by your hourly rate, so forth, and we can show the cost perspective. But it's in the eye of the beholder. What is affordable, right? When you say $50, that's 10 cups of coffee,
right?
But again, that's a very difficult conversation to have with somebody that they're razor thin margins to begin with.
Absolutely.
Right? So, but it is one of the biggest barriers of entrance. And then, but also then they think of implementation. Oh, it's going to take me forever to learn how to use this. That means it's more money because now I have more downtime and so forth, right? It's just there's a lot of these variables that are similar to each other, but they compound on each other. And to speak to Carlos about, paperwork tracking or so forth, I mean, that's one of the big things that you would want a TMS for. I got a customer that calls me and I need they're questioning a rate that on the invoice. Well, now I got to fumble through my filing cabinet to find that invoice, and I got to figure out and then reprint it and send it back out. Right, with the TMS, you can just search for the load, edit it. I mean, and then send it back out to either to you guys for factoring or wherever. Also, what's important is to track the revenue side, not just your cost per mile, but revenue. Your top line, especially if you're playing off the spot market. You might see a load that's paying, oh wow, it's $3 per mile, but where's it going? Is there another load afterwards? Is it going to cost you more money in cost than what your revenue is, right? You don't know these things unless you know all your numbers. If anybody's watched Shark or whenever you try to do a pitch on Shark Tank, they say you better know your numbers. It's the same thing with trucking. You better know your numbers or you're going to run yourself in the ground. So
absolutely. Gurvir, I know you've thought a lot about payroll. Carlos is in a bit of a noisy spot, so he's not able to unmute himself to join the conversation, but he's giving us some great feedback here in the chat here. So I did want to bring up the payroll issue and the options and services that and technology that are out there for trucking companies. I know you've looked into this a little bit. Can you speak at all to the role of payroll and how that should be implemented, how people can better manage that?
Yeah, I can add a few comments there. When we ran payroll, it was always within our TMS because that's where the loads live. And you're probably paying your drivers either by per mile or percentage of load, depending on what that your payroll method is. I think it should live within your TMS. I think once you calculate the payroll, how you make that payroll is a secondary system, whether you use your banks or whether you use a third party. So I'll spend more time on the first. So I think your TMS should be able to do this very well. So either if you do it by percentage, should be able to pick the percentage for the driver, create a driver profile. I think the way we used to do it was in trucking office was, and this is like 7-8 years ago, was that we would create a load, we would assign it to a driver, and then whenever their weekly settlement was due, we would just pick the loads that we wanted to pay them for that week. And the rates were already in there, and we sort of kept things very simple, and it was just percentage of their total rate. I think at that time, which is about 10 years ago, we would pay our drivers like 25% of the total freight rate. And the trucking office would spit out a number based on the rate, on the line haul rate. We would adjust the rate based on if they took any advance or anything like that, and then we would get the final amount that we were going to transfer over to the driver, and that transfer amount always matched with what left our bank account. So that was our method, but I think your payroll should definitely live within your TMS if you're using a TMS. If you're not using a TMS, then it does become tough, because I think you're just spending a lot of time, if you're doing it in Excel or a piece of paper. I remember my dad used to do it on a piece of paper. I was just, I had no idea how he did it. But it was just a lot of notebooks, man. It was just, each week each paper deserved its own week, and he just had like all these loads. And but I would personally say that your TMS should be able to do your payroll, and then just use a secondary system to make that transfer out.
Absolutely. George, can you speak at all to the payroll systems that are available to truckers, and how that might be made a little bit more efficient for people? And Carlos mentioned that sometimes it never adds up. Like sometimes the amounts just don't even add up.
In a sense, payroll, and I'm trying not to water it down, but it's essentially the reverse of an invoice, right? It's the same kind of concept, right? It's money going out, not coming in. So for example, with TrueTMS, we create, the settlement rules, just like you would have billing rules, right? This driver gets paid this amount per loaded mile and this amount per empty mile. And then you hit the settlement button and it creates the data. But we don't process the payroll. We just provide the data. Now that can be consumed by various payroll systems out there, either straight to your bank, or you can go to like Green Shades is one that does it. Larger companies might use Sage 400. Some might use SAP. It's at that point, it's data. It's passing the data and letting the processing company do the processing, right? And that's not unique to trucking. That's just payroll payment processing in general, right? But the way I look at it is like it's a reverse invoice, right?
Right. So. Again, you're saying it's about the data, and Carlos, what you're referring to, sometimes it just doesn't ever add up. That's a data problem, right? That's not a processing problem. That's not even a usability problem. It's just a data issue. So I know it looks like you're spending $30 on your trucking office software. Might want to go check out TrueTMS.com because they've got a really affordable one that's pretty comparable to what you're doing now, and probably will give you a lot better data security and peace of mind when you're making those calculations, because that can really, make or break. Obviously, payroll, if you have a number of drivers, that's going to be your number one expense. And not having peace of mind that that's taken care of and that you can trust the data coming out of your platform, that can be really stressful. So definitely go check out TrueTMS.
Yeah, and one thing about, again, I'm not here to speak ill of anyone out there in the industry. One difference between us and the other company that we're speaking of is, we have a lot of these pieces and parts built into the core, tracking and tracing, invoicing, imaging, right? All the stuff that you need to be able to create that data that is then consumed by, say, you guys at Bobtail to pay the debt that's due, or invoice, or settlements for the driver. Carlos and anybody else, we right now are offering a 60-day free trial, and there's more to be had on that later on. Again, don't want to divulge into things, but support's free, implementation's free. We're here to help. But yeah, so again, I'm not here to sell me. I'm here to help the people that are on the phone here. And
yeah, absolutely. I have another follow-up. And I'll start with Gurvir, but I don't want to ask both of you. Can you explain a little bit about the customers that you've seen? If you have a story of a customer that you have seen implement either factoring on Bobtail side, the TMS on TrueTMS side, can you illustrate a little bit about how that happened, how it worked, and how it helped their business?
Yeah, I can highlight a few of our clients. I think one particularly that I onboarded myself like long time ago. I think they used to factor with another factoring company, and they were having to do collections or a lot of the collections themselves. So they would factor an invoice, they would get funding, but then they were responsible for making collections calls. and making sure that the factoring company got paid. With Bobtail, we handle all of those things. We're the ones that are following up, continuously with the shippers and the brokers to make sure that the payment has been received. You'll see sometimes, under our notes, we'll get the check number, we'll get the payment date, and that gives a lot of assurance to the company that, hey, the payment is on its way, and we have a check number now. Because the most important thing for the trucking company is that making sure that they are aware of which brokers are paying, which brokers are not paying. And that probably leads to their decision making of which brokers do they want to haul for and which ones they don't. So we help save a lot of time for that company, whereas they needed a complete in-house person just doing collections. They're able to eliminate that and give that responsibility over to Bobtail. But also just get that data. When we call on a broker, they're able to see and expand on the notes of the of that load and see when the payment is coming. They're able to see their aging breakdown. They're able to see which brokers pay late, which ones pay on time. I think those things help a lot. And even if you're a single owner operator, it could sometimes take 2 hours a week to do those things. So I think that was one case where we helped save a lot of office hours for this client.
Right. And I think that also puts the ball back into the court of the technology company, because it's not just about the interface, right? We've talked a lot about implementing technology and what the interface looks like, it being easy to use, but it's also the other people on the other side of that technology who are building it and making improvements for it on the factoring side. It's literally human beings who are calling and making collections calls and making sure that we're, getting paid for the invoices that we've already paid out, and giving visibility and control to the carrier so that they can also see that and have peace of mind that they're not going to get, they're not going to get bothered by the broker.
I did add another thing onto this, Caroline, sorry, which I think how we developed our technology was also very different. I mean, I remember the old system that one of the factoring companies used. It just seemed like something that an accountant would use. Even the verbiage of a lot of these things like accounts receivable or a non-factored payment, truckers don't understand that lingo. So you have to simplify these things, and we sort of redesigned our factoring platform to service the trucker, not to service the accountant, right? So for example, Carlos said, hey, look, my factoring continuously misplaces payments, right? And I'm sure that's a challenge sometimes, finding those payments. And by the way, you should not even be doing that work. And that's a factoring company's job to make sure that the plane is properly placed on each load. And if they can't find that load in the system, it's a non-factored payment, then they should make it easier for Carlos to see, hey, look, we received a payment that we have no idea where to apply. And how can we make that easier for Carlos to see that, right? And what other information is available? Can we see the load number? Can we see who the payment came from? Otherwise, like Carlos said, is why we have to spend hours finding that out. And that should, by the way, be on the factoring company. No owner operator or small company should be doing that stuff. So we try to address it through technology, through design, but also offloading some of those customer and responsibilities over to Bobtail, because we can do those things at scale. And I think that's one of the things that we should be doing with factoring. Our job is just not to give you funding the same day and not worry about that invoice. We should actually carry you through all the way until it's paid. And we further than that. Sometimes when the broker doesn't pay, we file a claim on your behalf, right? And there's a dedicated team that handles your account. So we try to make sure that we're really looking out for the carrier and making sure this invoice has a cycle. It goes from funding the client and all the way to a resolution, which is, did the carrier get paid on this or not, right? So we try to tackle the full cycle. And if the carrier does not get paid, we'll file a claim. We'll even file a claim after the shipper, because our goal is that, hey, look, if the broker went out or filed for bankruptcy, we have other avenues to collect on this payment. So Bobtail's job is to make sure that somehow the carrier is getting paid. So it's various different ways that we can tackle that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's about the human touch behind the technology. How do you approach the design and make sure that the experiences of people like Carlos are considered? And Carlos, just to answer your question, do you have an agent assigned or is it a team? We do have a couple of teams And you're assigned to one of those teams that's just, excuse me, it's just a few people.
So we have a dedicated team, and there's a team lead that essentially handles your account. So that's a dedicated team that you go to for any questions. And the team lead is available to answer your questions, and there's also 3 other agents on that team. So we sort of have a dedicated team model. And the reason we went towards a team rather than an agent is because sometimes agent is on vacation or is not available. So we always assign a team to you that there's always someone to help you out with an invoice issue. And your team is an expert on your account. They exactly know what has been processed, what hasn't been processed. They're aware of your aging. They're aware of your issues. So the team is able to help you a lot better.
George, I'd love to hear your and TrueTMS approach to designing the technology and how you incorporate that very human element from trucking into your platform.
We use the attentive ear approach, right? We have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Same thing with, right? We talk to our customers, not only as a customer, but at these events. Find out, like I said, what makes it easier for them to use. And to speak of like a case study, if you went to our website, TrueTMS.com, right at the front page, we do have a case study from TV Trucking. They're a 2-truck operation, owner-operator. And, the thing about a TMS, what helped Heather and them is something like invoicing that would take them several hours to put together all the paperwork to create that invoice and make sure it was right is now being done in a matter of seconds, right? Because it's being done as it goes, right? When we scan the bill of lading and any proof of delivery or any supporting document that's needed, like a receipt, we digitally stitch that to the invoice that's generated when the load is complete. And then, working with, like, say, Bobtail, we can right away put that up onto your portal and get you paid because we are providing the data and details and supporting documents that you guys would need to be able to prove the load was completed and what is owed, and the assignment of the debt. So, it's because of that. I mean, that has, increased their cash flow, right? They're now able to think about, can I expand my business now? Nobody wants to stay status quo. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd like to grow not only personally, but financially and so forth. But doing all this administrative work on the side is not going to help you get there. So how do we, do that? Just like Troy and Heather will talk about from TV Trucking, by implementing a TMS like TrueTMS.
Right. And I think every business owner, business leader can empathize with the constant putting out of fires that it takes to run and start a small business. And at some point you have to be able to step away from that. And there are 2 ways that you can do that. And you're probably in any business going to do a combination of these. You're going to automate and you're going to hire people as you grow, right? And I think the beauty of technological innovation is that it allows small businesses a lot of flexibility to decide how they want to do that. How do you want to grow? Do you want to automate more? Do you want to hire more people as you grow? And it's for every business, it's going to be a combination of those 2 things. But of course, the more that you can automate and not just automate, but trust. You can automate a process, but if you can't trust that process and that automation in the platform, then the automation really hinders growth. It doesn't improve it. So again, having that important human connection behind the screens to help you do that. And I know support at TrueTMS comes with the platform. And I'm sure that's an important thing that owner operators and small fleet managers really appreciate about your platform.
Yeah, actually, there's a quote just about that by Heather. It says, TrueTMS solution is backed by an amazing customer support team and has made our lives a lot easier, and we plan on the future with them. So you're right. It's the human element, right? I mean, without that, technology doesn't mean anything, right? Because, we're not at a full AI world like the Jetsons and so forth, right? So we need to have some human interaction.
Absolutely. That's really key. Well, I really appreciate your all of your points, and everyone from Carlos and Igor and everyone who's contributed to the conversation. I really appreciate it. But what are some of the other tools that you use, and what kind of features do you wish that you had access to? And as we get comments in the chat, I'll pose that as sort of the last question to Gurvir and George. What is the future for, let's start with you, George. What is the future of TrueTMS? And I know there's something that you've been hinting at that you can't share today, but maybe some other things that you're excited about for the future of TrueTMS and your solution.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as technology always evolves, I mean, just again, there's been a lot of automated processes. Now everybody wants to call it AI, but there's been robotic process automation going on for several years. I would say we will start seeing more of that, leveraging our partnerships with other technology vendors. Right now we have partnerships with a few load boards, truckstop.com and 123 load board. But I eventually will start, I would say we'll start seeing some suggested loads come out of that by using AI, saying, hey, this is the truck's location. Here's some available spot load trucks, spot rate loads nearby. We suggest this to being the next one, or dynamic dispatching. Schedule one load on the drive, but it starts feeding based on location, traffic, weather, so forth. What is the next load I should be doing? So a little bit more queuing up, I would start seeing, but that's leveraging the new technology that's coming out here. And real quick, and that's one thing we at TrueTMS have been building our platform using these modern technology methodologies and using our own APIs, which will allow us to adopt these new technologies faster than my predecessor that is using more of an antiquated technology that's more rigid and is not allowing them to innovate as fast. So that's what I'm excited about, is the innovation of what's there.
Absolutely. Gurvir, can you tell us about maybe a little bit jumping off of that AI conversation? What is next for Bobtail? Of course, there are things that you might not want to divulge just yet and that we are going to be announcing over the next couple of months. But what are some new things at Bobtail and things that you're excited about for the future?
Yeah, I'll start with our mission, which is we want to eliminate inefficiencies that exist. And one of the ways that we're doing this is we look at the fintech space and then the financial space within trucking. So we'll continue to be customer focused. We'll continue to improve our factoring product. So on the factoring side, making factoring easier and more efficient, with things like auto invoicing and less data entry. And we just launched our fuel finder. So our goal is to show you every single truck stop and every single pricing. What we've noticed is that 20% of the truck stops out there have lower pricing, even after TA Loves or Pilot gives you 60 or 70 cents off, right? Those small guys are still much cheaper without any discounts, right? That's an efficiency that we're bringing. Our goal was to, hey, let's just give you pricing for every truck stop, right? Whether it has a discount or whether it doesn't have a discount. Discounts is sort of a scam in the industry, right? Retailers will pump up the retail price of a diesel and then tell you, hey, you're saving 80 cents, right? When they could have just, put a different retail price out there. So we're noticing these inefficiencies in every single thing that we do, primarily in fact, where we'll continue to improve the product even more to ensure that you have the lowest cost of diesel on that route when you're doing your route planning. So a lot of cool stuff. And I think we're just continuing to focus on these two products. And then we'll be making some announcements for next year, introducing new products.
Nice. So how do you find the best price on fuel? That's one, manual task that you're doing every day, probably using multiple apps, maybe even making calls to figure out what the best price is. And how could that be helped by a platform? We're just announced our fuel finder. So that's a brand new app, part of our app that we have. So we're really excited about that. But definitely share in the chat if you have any other manual tasks that you're doing over and over again, or information that you're needing to find manually that you wish there was a platform out there. This week we've launched our fuel finder, so you can definitely find that at bobtail.com. If you just go to our website, you'll see all the information about it too and how to apply. And we will get you in the know about that.
Our fuel finder works really, really well for about 30% of the truck stops that don't offer any discounts but have a really cheap price, right?
Okay.
So the differentiator between our app and Mudflap is that Mudflap only shows you in-network truck stops, and you see the final price. Sometimes they're giving you 20 cents, sometimes they give you 30 cents, but they give you a final price. Our assessment shows that final price, even after a discount, is sometimes higher than other truck stops that don't offer any discounts. So sometimes you'll go to Circle K, right, in Atlanta or something, and their price is already really cheap. Even though they're not offering any discount, it's still cheaper than Mudflap offering 30 cents. So with our fuel finder, you get to see every single truck stop in the US. You're just not limited to seeing only Mudflap merchants or XPO merchants. It only shows you certain selected merchants. With ours, you can essentially search for any truck stop. And but slowly, we're also introducing discounts as well. So in about a few months, you're going to be able to see discounted truck stops, but also see non-discount truck stops. And our goal is to give you the lowest price and the best price, regardless of the discount, right? Where's the lowest price so that you can shop accordingly.
Thank you so much. Great information.
That really sounds like a perfect feature. Really, that sounds really helpful.
Is
it like is it available like offline, or do you have to always be online? Like, is it possible maybe to download the local map of those truck stops? If, for example, they are in a particular state, to download the map of the state to always be
sort of
informed?
always live. You're not going to be able to download the map because pricing changes so much. I think diesel pricing changes like 4 times a day. So there's not much of a usefulness to just like download a map. But yeah, so we kind of want to show you a live data. At any
I think also would be very, very nice to implement the statistics feature, for example, for the states, where you will be able to see the stats for the particular truck stop. I think this would be very helpful for the trucker.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the feedback. That's a good idea.
I think too, potentially, one of the other barrier is understanding IFTA. So if you're really searching for the best price on fuel, you might see that it's the same price, let's say, here in Grand Rapids, and then right across the border into Indiana, maybe you see that it's a cheaper price. But maybe Michigan's fuel tax is higher than Indiana's. And in fact, it is. It's, I think about 10 cents, 5 or 10 cents higher than Indiana. So in reality, sometimes even if you see the retail price being the same, you minus IFTA taxes out of that, and you're actually going to have a better deal filling up in one state rather than another. So that's another barrier that people may or may not see all the time when they see a retail price. But I know I was just looking at our fuel finder today, and I was looking at the truck stops around my area, and the bigger truck stops their prices were 30 cents higher than just the speedway up the road. And so that was eye-opening to me, because 30 cents a gallon, that's a big deal. That can make a huge difference. I really appreciate everyone coming and connecting and having this conversation there. If you want to learn more about our factoring service, go to bobtail.com. Any closing remarks, George, Gurvir, that you want to share before everybody hops off?
I just want to thank you guys for having me on today, and I look forward to our continued collaboration and also doing one of these again in the future. This is so beneficial, not only to speak, but hear firsthand from people, especially Jose, who's driving right now, hearing from him things that what's in need, right? And that's so valuable. So I appreciate the time that you guys provided today.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, George. Thank you so much. I'd say this, look, trucking market is shit right now, right? Loads rates suck, but it'll bounce back up like it always have been. I've seen 3 cycles personally. It's about a 6-year cycle where 2 years are down, 2 years are, stable, and 2 years are really, really good. I would say about Q2 of next year or Q1 of next year, you'll start seeing rates get better. But I think there's still too many trucks out there on the road. But be hopeful. Things will get better next year. Rates will come back up. And I would say learn to make decisions according to these cycles. That's one of the things that helped me. When everybody was selling trucks, that's when I would buy trucks. When everybody was buying trucks, I would not buy trucks, right? It's a very common thing to keep in mind. When everybody's buying a truck around you, you know that you're at the top of the bubble and this bubble is going to burst. So I would say keep that in mind if you're looking to stay in the industry for a long, long time. Be sure that you know about these cycles and how they work. And make sure you save for the rainy day when it's a year and a half of a freight slug. So keep those things in mind, and I would say learn from data and try to make best informed decisions in this business. There's a lot of money to be made, but you definitely got to know what's going on, and you got to have data and have visibility into a lot of things that you're doing. But stay hopeful. I would say the trucking market will return by next year.
Ooh, from your mouth to God's ears, Gurvir. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Jose, for making the time to join us again. And Igor, thanks for your contribution as well. I know we met a couple of days ago, so
I really appreciate
your words and your contribution, George. As always, a pleasure. And we will see you guys next time. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube as well, Bobtail Capital, and we will see you in the next event. Thank you so much, everybody.